Mozilla. So from Mastodon to Mozilla. We'll be working on transparency and privacy. Tasos Stampelos is our new speaker. He's Mediterranean, like myself, but he's coming from Brussels, and I said, yeah, that's a great city. It's very complicated for us being there. But he will be talking about what he does for Mozilla as the public policy director for the European Union, giving back control to the citizens and the browser they use. He works on creating an internet safer, more secure, and more just places. And so you have the floor.
Tasos Stampelos, director de políticas públicas en Europa para Mozilla, trabaja para que las personas tengan más privacidad, más transparencia y más control sobre su vida digital. Desde Mozilla lidera iniciativas que buscan hacer de Internet un espacio más seguro y más justo. Lo hace con propuestas que anticipan riesgos y transforman las reglas del juego digital en favor de la ciudadanía. La autonomía digital es clave para que Internet funcione.
Tasos, thank you very much for being here with us. Welcome to the stage. You're, of course, Mozilla's Director of European Union Public Policy. We're going to talk about privacy, we're going to talk about transparency, we're going to talk about regulation, about AI. But first of all, we want to get to know you a little better, to get to know your journey. Can you tell us about it? Why do you personally care about the digital rights in Europe, and what brought you to Mozilla, if you could share with us?
Great, yeah. Thank you very much for having me today, for the invitation. First time in Malaga, impressed, so I should come again very soon. So I'm glad you actually do it here, not in Madrid or any other central kind of, big capital or any big city. Yeah, so, a bit of, I guess, background on my end. I'm actually based in Brussels, grey Brussels, as Angel just said, which is actually true. The reason of me being in Brussels is because this is the center, let's say, of European regulatory making, right? With the European institutions there is a lot of legislation coming out of Brussels that impacts our daily lives. And when I arrived in Brussels, one of the main usual things that many people do is just start with an internship. You work for a public affairs firm, and that's how I also started my career in Brussels. And I started working for a firm that actually had many big tech accounts. So I used to, work with Google and work with other big players. And of course, it was also the moment where Europe was actually starting a lot of the regulatory wave on digital and tech space, right? So it was the moment of what Europe called at the time the digital single market. And it had a lot of legislation coming out of it. It was right after GDPR was adopted. There was stuff around copyright directive, preparations for the Digital Services Act, Digital Markets Act. AI was not a thing yet. Of course, it became very soon after that. One thing that impressed me a lot in Brussels was the presence, the strong presence and the strong voice of civil society in the advocacy space and in the policy making. That is not a given, right? And then obviously, I know I'm preaching to the choir here because you all fight for this type of exposure with in front of Europe, in front of policymakers, right? When you're coming from a big tech, you're actually coming from big pockets. You're coming from huge resources, and it's way easier your message to reach the other side, right? Whereas when you're civil society, you need to find other very intuitive ways to be able to communicate and get the message across. And one of the things that became very clear as well is that civil society was actually quite successful in convincing European policymakers that what matters is to build technology that advances human agency, not limiting it, right? The European regulation over time, with its good or bad elements. As you will see, during our discussion, I'm a big supporter of regulation, but that's of smart regulation, targeted regulation. I think that's what the European regulation has managed to do to an extent. Support human agency rather than trying to leave leave it up to the industry or like companies to decide like how our online world should look like. And that's obviously like when I became very interested in digital rights, but also where I found like very appealing to try and work for Mozilla. And I think Mozilla is a unique organization. For those of you who do not know Mozilla, we are building the open source browser Firefox. I hope you all use it, or at least you're using a browser that is not part of the big three browsers, but you're actually like using in general like open source or decentralized products in your lives, as Andy mentioned before about Mastodon. What I think is very interesting about Mozilla is that it's both having one foot on the advocacy side, so we actually like advocate for certain principles: privacy, transparency, user choice, security. The Mozilla Manifesto makes it very clear that these, for example, 4 principles are not are foundational for all of us online, and they should not be considered as optional, right? Like so, we need to have them by default. We do the advocacy part. The other thing that is also very interesting for Mozilla is that we actually have like what you would call commercial products. Like we're building products in the market. Firefox is one of them, right? Like so, not only we advocate for those values, but we also try to embed them in our products. So the levels of privacy or like the tools that you have at hand when you use Firefox is different when you actually have Chrome, right? Or you have like other browsers. Same goes like for transparency or user choice. And the interesting part about like public policy and working like in the public policy side for Mozilla is that we also are able to try and embed these principles in European regulation, right? So privacy, transparency, user choice. We have like many examples that European regulation is trying to advance these principles.
Yeah, that's super interesting because of its own nature, of its own personality that you're describing. Mozilla has been around many battles around the web in the last 25 years. And I was wondering which lessons from this battle, from this journey, you think that may be useful, are more important now than ever with the rise of AI, where we're seeing that some of the same challenges, we are facing them again, right?
Yeah, no. Also, by the way, I'm talking a lot, so you can stop me whenever.
No,
right?
That's great.
So yeah, like Mozilla has been around for a long time, I think more than 25 years, or we just celebrated our 25 years. And the reason I'm saying that is because I think we've seen like a lot of there is a long history for Mozilla, and we've seen like a lot of evolution on the web over time. So many of you might know or might remember in the 90s there was this thing called the browser wars. I mean, it sounds very exciting or like Star Wars style, but I think it was actually quite fundamental of what was happening at the time, and quite telling as well of what we are actually seeing happening right now. So during the browser wars, at the time there was Netscape was the main browser that many of you might have used quite a lot in the 90s, and Microsoft, when Microsoft came in to become interested in the browser space as well, they built Internet Explorer, and what they also decided to do at the time was to bundle Internet Explorer with their operating system, Windows, right? Like that, Windows, of course, as is today, is the dominant operating system, at least when it comes like to desktop and our laptops. So by bundling Internet Explorer with the operating system, in essence, they were forcing everyone to use Internet Explorer. Now, browsers might seem as a boring product to many. Don't quote me on that. I mean, but they're also very important, right? Like because browsers are the way that we're actually accessing the web, right? Like it's the window, like let's say to the web, and the way they're operating is quite impactful and influencing our choices online as well, right? So this bundling obviously like limited choice a lot. What some people and the founders of Mozilla as well decided to do at the time was to build an open source browser, Firefox, and offer this like for everyone as an alternative to what Microsoft was trying to do. Over time, we have seen also that this kind of bundling or self-preferencing is happening in many different areas and products, right? Like that has happened also with Chrome, and Google Chrome is actually leveraging a lot the fact that Google owns Android as an operating system. Same goes with Safari and Apple, and the bundling that is happening there with Apple's operating system. So over time, we're seeing like this trend keep happening. Now, why we're trying to keep fighting that good fight, let's say, at Mozilla is that we consider ourselves like the last major independent browser, and I say independent because we do not have any operating system. We're not bundled with any operating system. What we're trying to do is that advocate for user choice and making sure that this bundling or self-preferencing is not happening, not because we think is bad for our business, but because it actually drives users into a certain direction without giving them a plethora of options and choices. What is becoming very interesting, and all these like lessons that we learned over time, is that in the context of AI, this is becoming even more blurry or muddled, right? Like it's not, it's going to be even more complicated for users to be able to understand, exercise their choices, and also like have true human agency. And the reason is, I mean, we've already seen it happening, right? When Microsoft launched Copilot, if you wanted to use Copilot, you actually had to, you could subscribe to it, like, have early access, but you actually had to also use Microsoft Edge. So Microsoft browser, right? Like, so they were kind of like giving you the option or the choice to use one of their new shiny products as long as you use another product of theirs. That means you're moving away from your preferred browser at the time, be it like Chrome, or be it also like Firefox, right? So this for us is obviously like ways that you are distorting user choice. And we're going to be seeing that more and more happening with the AI. Our goal here is to make sure that what we're building in AI still is competitive, is built in the open, right? Like, and it's for everyone to be able to use it the way they want to. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. You said earlier that you are a fan of smart regulation, right? And Europe, of course, is leading this major regulatory debate on AI and digital rights. How do you see these efforts? Are trying to create real choice?
Yeah.
Are they achieving it?
Yeah.
How is this process? I guess it's really difficult. Yeah.
That is a great question, because there is one thing about the regulation, right? Like, first of all, any regulation is a result of a compromise, right? Like, you can never get. You can never please all stakeholders or all sides, and that's part of the job or part of the game, right? But I think Europe has actually done a great deal of good for the web and the open web over time with regulation. If I were to pick two examples of regulation that has managed to achieve these goals, is like Digital Markets Act and the AI Act, right? They're two different pieces of legislation, but they actually matter a lot for users and user choice. Now, the other issue with regulation is that usually it's not explained to the masses, right? Like, it's not explained like to the average citizen, and that's probably like a job that we all have to do, and actually go out there, also like the policymakers, and explain that what they're doing and what they're legislating affects their daily lives. So, to take, for example, Digital Markets Act. Digital Markets Act, the point of this regulation, in essence, is to be able to create this fair and contestable, as we call them, like markets online. There are certain like areas, like operating systems, like browsers, that they are dominated by a few players. And the whole idea here is that you are creating a set of obligations that these companies have to adhere to in order not to locking up the market even more than it is right now, and actually create chances and opportunities for other players to compete on a level playing field. Now, many of you might actually have an iPhone, which is great. I also have an iPhone. Amazing Apple products for sure, but they have their own issues as well when it comes like to competition. You might have also received, or when you did like a big update, you might have seen like what we call a choice screen, right? Like a choice screen is prompting you to decide and choose which search engine or which browser you want to use as your default browser. This choice screen that actually was popping up in your phones, be it like an Android phone or an Apple phone, is a result of that regulation, right? Like, so is a result of like, I don't know, 5 years of fighting, let's say, that we had in Brussels, trying to make sure that we are actually giving users this genuine choice to decide which browser they want to be the default browser and not the one that your operating system decides that it has to be your default browser, right? Like, so obviously I want to use Firefox on my Apple. Why should I be forced to use Safari, which is obviously Apple's browser? So that is one example. Another example is like the AI Act, as I mentioned before, where I think it's first of its kind. Also, some say that Europe was going too soon into regulating AI because we don't know what AI is or should look like. I disagree, because I think what the AI Act actually did is create this risk-based framework, saying that some AI uses should be prohibited, right? Like social scoring. No, we don't do that in Europe. Maybe other jurisdictions do it, but this is not something that we should be using AI for. Then you have like the higher risk cases, where of course you have to have another set of obligations if you're developing or deploying AI in high risk cases. And then you have like the majority of use cases of AI. They're not evading legislation, but they have very light obligations. So this is obviously like another great example. Now, what is interesting, I think, with regulation is that it's good on paper, you need to enforce it. Like, if you don't enforce regulation, it's not, let's say, it's not having the effects that you might desire. There is one thing that we've been like talking a lot about as Mozilla in Brussels, which is called effective compliance. We've been seeing in the Digital Markets Act, for example, that many of the gatekeepers are dragging their feet. They're actually not complying. Even anecdotally, I have heard one of the gatekeepers, so gatekeepers are the big tech players, right? Actually saying that you need to give us time to be able to comply. But when you're like Microsoft or Google or like Apple, why do you need time? You have all this huge amount of resources and you know what the obligations are, right? Like, why do you need more time to be able to comply with some of the rules? So effective compliance is something that we have not been seeing. Effective compliance means that you just don't do the letter of the law. This is not a tick-the-box exercise. You actually need to be able to deliver also in the spirit of the law. So this is like the big fight that we're having now, like in Brussels, right? Like, to deliver on that.
Yeah, and there's also this idea of Europe as a global superpower on regulatory issues, right? That if we can settle these standards in Europe, they may have also a global implication. What do you think of that? Do you think it's something that may really happen? It's something that we're already seeing? Or?
Yeah, this is what is called the Brussels effect, right? Like, what is it? I think like US exports technology or like platforms, and what Europe is doing is exporting regulation, right? Like, this is what many people say. I mean, it can go either way, right? Like, so I think it has like some great positive effects when it comes to competition or AI, right? Like, so we are seeing in many jurisdictions, or even the Digital Services Act that I think like a few of the previous speakers also alluded to. You can see like that positive spillover effect happening, like with, for example, competition regulation now is popping up in Japan, you have in Korea, you have in Australia, there is in Brazil, there are discussions happening in the UK, the competition law along the lines of Digital Markets Act is actually very, very mature as well, and it's already adopted. So you see like many different jurisdictions trying like to copy what Europe has been trying to do. Same goes with GDPR, right? I think GDPR has created this global effect as well, and we also see it happening in AI. Now, it can also have like a bit of a negative effect, right? Like, what we've been trying and fighting a lot as Mozilla in Brussels is not to have regulation that will actually create a global precedent that will impact or will be copied in other jurisdictions and will actually impact fundamental rights and impact the open web as a whole. So I think there was a great question before about chat control, right? Like, there has been a lot of discussions happening in Brussels the past 2-3 years around chat control, what is also like known as child sexual abuse material regulation. In essence, if the idea goes forward as is right now, indeed, it would break encryption. This is something that we've been complaining a lot about. We've been raising the alarm. Civil society has been very active and vocal on that, which is amazing, and digital rights organizations the same. Our concern here is not only about Europeans, right? Like, I mean, obviously it's about Europeans, but then what if another jurisdiction decides that this is a great idea, Europe did it, it's a democratic region, right? Like, why not actually also do it in our jurisdiction? And then you pick up this idea, you have actually broken encryption, right? You have introduced client-side scanning, and then, of course, Europe will tell you that we introduced client-side scanning to protect children, fair. But then once you open the door is not closing again, right? Like, so you might actually use this type of capability to scan communications on your phone for any other purpose outside of only protecting children. There are many other ways, and we should definitely like put regulation in place that protects children, but this is not probably like the right way. So we're very mindful that we're actually not letting European regulation be used as a bad example in other regions in the world. So yeah.
Okay, that's super interesting. Thank you very much, Tasos. We're gonna open the floor now to any question the audience may have, and I see already one there. I think we only have time for one actually, so maybe.
Yeah, sorry, I told you.
No worries. Yeah. So it will be just one question, and after this,
sure.
If you are open to conversation
Definitely,
with people here, it will be super interesting for both of us.
Hi, Tasos. Thanks for sharing your thoughts and be here. Mozilla was one of the pioneers on the fighting on three-party cookies, blocking and so on. I am asking what is now thinking or preparing for example, the privacy sandbox that Chrome tried to implement this year, NodeFlock, Tropics APA, and so on. What has Mozilla tried to bring us to continue to protect all our privacy in an ecosystem where we have shared space with seller, customer, and after all, as you say, the rest of the people are trying to compete through technology, and here in Europe, we are trying to do through the legislation. So.
Yeah, that's so third-party cookies is my favorite question, or privacy sandbox, you know, like, or favorite topic like to discuss. Yeah, so I think like many of you know that third-party cookies are a huge issue, right? Like third-party cookies are a huge violation to our privacy, especially on the way that you currently consent. And I use consent because I don't think like the consent is actually given in a free way, right? I think we're all manipulated. I even click many times like accept on a cookie banner, not because I'm annoyed, but because also like it's so hard like to be able like to follow what is happening, right? It's a big disappointment that Google did not move forward with deprecating third-party cookies like every other major browser has done it. The fact that Google has not done it, and they have like this big, very huge, big market share, is actually still impacting a lot of us. What is even more disappointing, I think, is how Google tried like to portray the reason why they have not been deprecating third-party cookies. And they've always like been placing like privacy and competition as like two opposing forces, which for us is not the case, right? Like, so Google will tell you that if we deprecate third-party cookies, which is good like for users' privacy, competition will go down, right? Like, because we are the ones like, we will not be sharing like the data, or we will not allow like others like to be able to offer a better personalized experience like for users online, since they won't be able like to do this type of tracking. Then if they allow third-party cookies still there, it means that privacy is bad for everyone. This is not like one versus the other. Like, I think they're actually complementing quite well each other. So you can do the deprecation of third-party cookies. You can preserve users' privacy. You can even deploy like a lot of the stuff that Firefox is doing with enhanced tracking protection, total cookie protection, and so on. And at the same time, make sure that the market is competitive. How can you do that? You need to have like legislation like Digital Markets Act, right? Like the fact that Google has like, I don't know, probably like 70% of the market share is not an excuse of not allowing users to have a private experience online. So kind of like maybe a call like to everyone as well here is, I mean, I'm not saying use Firefox, but definitely use this type of products that you know they are either open, they're decentralized, like on the social space. Use Mastodon, right? Like on the browser space, use anything that is not big three, right? Like on anything, I mean, on your chatbots, like go for those options. You know, I use ChatGPT, I use Gemini, I use Mistral, I use like most of the platforms out there when it comes like to AI assistants and chatbots. What's important here is to be able to use those, right? Like, for those platforms to be interoperable in any of the products that you're using and not be like forced to use like only one. So this is kind of like use Chrome if you want to, sure, but then there are also like other options out there that will give you actually more privacy or like more choice. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Tasos, for super interesting speaking.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tasos.